The war in Ukraine is topping the agenda for German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in talks with US President Joe Biden in Washington. It's Scholz's first visit to the White House since the invasion. The two leaders are focusing on support for Kyiv and concerns that China is planning to provide Russia with military assistance. The US has also announced a new $400 million package of military aid for Kyiv.
A lot changed since the last year you were here.
Scholz says Germany is committed to backing Ukraine for as long as it takes.
It's really important that we acted together, that we organized our lockstep, and that we made it feasible that we can give the necessary support to Ukraine during all this time. And at this time, I think it is very important that we give the message that we will continue to do so as long as it takes and as long as it is necessary.
And in Washington, outside the White House, DW's Michaela Küfner is standing by for us. Michaela, any word about what Biden and Scholz actually discussed?
No, and we learned from both sides that this is, to the very largest part, this one-hour meeting, supposed to be a one-on-one meeting with no press conference afterwards. So it's pretty much a guessing game. But of course, we have spoken to officials, and we do know that Ukraine is top of the agenda and that there is concern on both sides over the situation in Ukraine at the moment around Bakhmut, where Ukrainian troops are very much under pressure. So it's no secret that future assistance are the key topics here, with both sides, of course, having seen a lot of public scrutiny, particularly the German Chancellor having been accused of having been too slow to come to the assistance of Ukraine in the past. Well, none of that here in Washington, D.C. In advance, both sides of the Atlantic, both from the ambassador in Germany, but also officials here. There was a lot of praise for Olaf Scholz actually continuing this lockstep that he keeps stressing, which last time around actually meant convincing the United States that it was in everybody's interest, in the interest of the West, to also send U.S. tanks, those Abrams tanks, to unlock the Leopards that are now going to be sent to Ukraine.
Now, how concerned are the U.S. and China, that U.S. and Germany rather, that China might be entering the Ukraine war as a weapons supplier to Moscow?
They are very concerned. China, of course, presented what it calls its own peace plan just a few days ago. It says it is not in favor of war, but it also refuses to condemn it. So it is sitting on the fence, to say the very least. And the worry now is that backing Russia implicitly could concretely also mean sending weapons. There are no intelligence reports we are aware of that have been made public that suggest that this has already taken place. But both sides, the Europeans and the US, are seeing this as a red line without mentioning this as necessarily being such a red line, and vowing that there would be consequences. But this is what we're hearing in the background. So no US president stepping in front of the cameras and saying this clearly and openly, and neither also from the German side. But we're left with no doubt that there would be a reaction from the West.
DW's Michaela Küfner there reporting from Washington. Thank you, Michaela. And earlier, Michaela talked with White House spokesman John Kirby. She asked him why this was the right moment for a meeting behind closed doors.
This is something that both leaders have been wanting to do, to get back together here again in the White House. We're grateful that Chancellor Scholz could make the time. We know it's a busy time for him, as it is for us here at the White House. We all know that these next weeks and months are going to be critical in Ukraine, and then we are all doing what we can, the Germans certainly included, to make sure that Ukraine has the capabilities that they need when the weather gets better to defend themselves against what we think will be a Russian offensive, but also to be able to conduct offensive operations of their own.
You mentioned those very capabilities. What's the U.S. expectation that Joe Biden is conveying to the German Chancellor on this?
This isn't about conveying expectations. I think you could see, certainly with the decision on tanks, that the United States and Germany are working together in closely coordinated ways, and I think they're going to talk about that today. I think that'll be the dominant issue in the discussion in the Oval Office, is about what we can continue to do to coordinate additional security assistance for Ukraine.
Looking, well, a bit further afield, China, potential Chinese weapons deliveries, that's something that's on everybody's mind. What's the latest information that the U.S. intelligence is telling you there, and what would be your expectation on action against China towards Germany and the EU?
We still don't have any indication that the Chinese have decided to move forward providing any kind of lethal weaponry or capabilities to Russia. They haven't taken it off the table, but we don't see any signs that they're moving in that direction right now, and we certainly hope that they don't. This is obviously a decision that President Xi has to make. We hope that he sees that it's not in China's best interest to move in this direction, that it shouldn't be in China's interest to help Mr. Putin continue to kill and slaughter innocent Ukrainians. What we need to all do is work to get this war to end. Now, it could end today if Mr. Putin would do the right thing. That's not going to happen. It doesn't look like anytime soon. But if and when it comes to negotiations, we need to be working to make sure that President Zelensky can succeed on the battlefield so that he can succeed at the negotiating table.
So are the two leaders also debating scenarios here, potential scenarios to end this war?
I think every time we talk with our allies and partners, we talk about how we can hopefully bring this war to an end. We all want it to end. As I said, it could end today. But short of that, we want it to end as soon as possible. So I would have every expectation that today President Biden and Chancellor Scholz will also talk about President Zelensky's proposal for a just peace. He's put forward a 10-point set of proposals on that. We all want to see if we can work to operationalize that. But I don't want to get ahead too far of the conversation. We'll have a readout when it's over.
Okay, John Kirby, Communications Coordinator of the National Security Council. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Now, for more on this, let's go to Thomas Silberhorn. He's the member of the German Parliament and the spokesman on transatlantic relations for the Conservative main opposition party. Mr. Silberhorn, this is Olaf Scholz's first visit to the US since Russia invaded Ukraine. What's in it for the Chancellor?
Well, first, I'm happy that he sent some messages, because in advance it was announced there would be no statement. And of course, after 1 year of war, Russian war against Ukraine, it's absolutely necessary that we join our forces and stand together with Ukraine. There have been some irritations on this debate on delivering tanks to Ukraine, but this is over now, and I think Scholz has a good opportunity and should make use of this opportunity to send joint messages together with President Biden.
Right, you have said today, you've claimed that Scholz doesn't have the will to lead. What do you mean by that, and how would you like him to show leadership in this particular situation?
I think the expectation of the United States towards Germany is to take a leadership role in Europe. And this expectation goes back to German unity. We are the biggest country, the strongest, economically strongest country in the center of Europe. The Brits are no longer member of the European Union. France has a specific role in NATO. It's not fully integrated because it has its own nuclear force. So Germany is left to take a leadership role. And this leadership role has been claimed by Chancellor Scholz himself in his sea change speech a year ago. That has been confirmed this week in a speech in the German Bundestag. But during this debate on German tank deliveries, he linked German deliveries to additional American deliveries of tanks. And this caused irritations, because the question was, does he really want to lead, or isn't this a denial to lead in Europe? And leadership in Europe is different from leadership role as the President of the United States has it, because leadership in Europe means to coordinate the Europeans, and this should be done, this should be taken by Germany and by the Chancellor himself.
If Germany was to lead in this particular situation, do you also mean lead militarily with the Bundeswehr in the sorry state that it's currently in?
Well, indeed, the chairman of the Social Democratic Party claimed the military leadership role, but of course this goes far beyond what we are doing right now. And I would say we need a joint approach of transatlantic partners and, of course, among European Union partners. So far, the United States are leading all the coordination work that has to be done with respect to Ukraine. And I think there is a step before the Europeans could better organize and manage their coordination within Europe, within the European Union. And in this regard, military capabilities play a role, because in land forces and in Ukraine, primarily tanks and artillery is needed. In land forces, this is a core capability for Germany, and that's why there is a natural leading and coordinating role of Germany also in a military regard.
Now, another field where Germany could take leadership, if you will, would be China. If China gets involved in that war by providing weapons to Russia, for example, should China be banned with sanctions, if you will? Would Germany support that or take a leadership role in that?
Well, I suppose that US President Biden and Chancellor Scholz might have discussed this. And again, there should be a joint approach of transatlantic partners. Whatever we do towards China, we have to understand that China as an autocratic system also plays an imperialistic role and did not only reach out to South Chinese islands, it also tries to reach Europe by this Road and Belt Initiative, by purchasing shares of European ports. And in this regard, we have to understand that China tries to increase our dependencies on China. We should do the opposite and reduce our dependencies to China. This is a common interest of the United States and Germany. And there's also, I think, a common interest of transatlantic partners to keep our technological superiority and to achieve our global goals in a joint approach. So there are a lot of building blocks we can rely on as transatlantic partners and which are a basis for a joint approach towards China.
Thomas Silberhorn there, member of the German main parliament opposition party. Thank you very much.
Thank you.